Yeah, Radio Wammo Breakfast.
The real consequence, should they go forward with a launch, is they will have missed an opportunity. Because what we presented to them, and what we've consistently presented to them, is an opportunity for them to take a different path than the one they've been taking, which is resulting in not simply hardship for their people, but a state that is decades behind their counterparts in the region.
Of course, that can only be Obama, and he's talking about North Korea there. It is Eye on the World with Paul Buchanan from 36parallel.com joining us today to talk about the issue of North Korea, specifically with the conference that's going on there in South Korea and Prime Minister John Key being there as well. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Good morning.
First up, give us a wee background on North Korea and the situation with nuclear weapons and why we're at where we're at now.
Well, North Korea is a nuclear weapons state. It's done 2 nuclear tests, and although they weren't completely successful, it's proven that it can detonate a nuclear device. And now what it's doing, and it has been doing for the past few years, is testing ballistic missiles that are capable of delivering a warhead at a considerable distance, more than 2,000 kilometers away. And what the concerns are about is that through a series of deals over the years, the West, the United States in particular, and the members of the 6 party talks, which are interested parties trying to get North Korea to denuclearize, have exchanged various forms of aid for delays in the missile testing program as well as North Korea's nuclear enrichment program. And the latest deal was completed on February 29th between the United States and North Korea, where the United States offered 250,000 tons of food aid in exchange for further delays in the ballistic missile testing program. The North Koreans have announced that they're ahead and launch a ballistic missile, exploiting a loophole in a UN ban against such tests by saying that they're going to place a satellite in orbit. It turns out the UN ban says nothing about satellites. It just talks about the boosters, the rockets themselves. And so the North Koreans claim that they have a legitimate right to put a satellite into geocentric orbit. Of course, the same booster that puts the satellite into orbit can in fact have a warhead on it in a future application, and that's the major concern of the West. And when Obama says that there's a missed opportunity, he's probably hinting at the fact that the U.S. could withdraw the food aid, but that puts the United States in a dilemma because the food aid is classified as humanitarian assistance, and humanitarian assistance is not supposed to be subject to diplomatic or political pressures or manipulation. So in a sense, the North Koreans have thrown the ball into the Americans' court.
Interesting. So at this conference that's going on at the moment, this isn't a UN conference, is it?
No, it's not. Actually, this is an initiative of the United States. President Obama, in his 2009 Prague speech, promised to lead the world in non-proliferation. And in 2010, we had the first meeting in Washington, D.C. You may recall that John Key was invited there, and he was quite chuffed about that because he got to meet Obama. He looked a little starstruck, to be honest with you. And this is the follow-up. The Koreans have decided that they will follow up, and the next one in 2014 will be held in the Netherlands. The theme of this particular conference is non-proliferation amongst non-state actors, and they're thinking of terrorists, jihadis and the like. And so neither North Korea or Iran are on the agenda, nor were they invited. They will be the subject of much discussion in the various bilaterals between the 54 countries represented. I think that might have been a mistake. There's a lot of accusations that both Iran and North Korea play very loose with their nuclear supplies, and so it might have been better to bring them into the fold and have them listen to others with regards to how to control small amounts of fissile material and the like. But whatever the case, the summit's being held in Korea. It doesn't include the North Koreans. And I think the North Koreans are making a little bit of a point by announcing this ballistic missile test right on the eve of the summit.
North Korea is always painted by the West and the media as being very irrational. Are they irrational?
Well, they might be crazy like a fox. I mean, they're not irrational. They're extremely rational. We may not understand their rationality. You know, they are an insular, rather paranoid, one-party authoritarian state. But if you think of rationality as simply weighing the costs and benefits of any particular action in pursuit of a goal, then of course the North Koreans are extremely rational. And when they do these sort of provocations, it's designed to exercise some leverage. They will get something out of this by being bellicose, by being provocative. They are able to gain things that they otherwise could not gain or obtain. In particular, fuel and food assistance, because it is a failing state other than its military apparatus. It has millions of starving people. And so by leveraging these tests in pursuit of food, they can feed their people nominally and still keep their military apparatus intact. I should also mention, of course, that the ballistic missile test has a lot to do with internal politicking within North Korea. Of course, we've had Kim Jong-il die last year. In fact, it's the end of the 100-day mourning period. And his son, his successor, has come in at age 27 into what is, let's just say, a very hard environment. That young man is surrounded by extremely tough individuals. He has no experience whatsoever in governing. And so this may be a way of shoring up support for him by the hardliners, continuing the Kim dynastic name. And so it's more about them and the internal politics than it is about diplomacy.
Every time that North Korea do some kind of test, some kind of war game, there is this threat of war. Will that happen this time if this missile test goes ahead?
No, there won't be a war, although we can expect that there might be some minor exchanges of fire across the DMZ or other border zones between the South Koreans and the North Koreans. This will definitely not lead to war. What it may lead to is, a freezing of the relationship between the six-party members and North Korea. Even the Chinese, who are the North Koreans' greatest patrons, are extremely concerned that the continuing provocations could lead inadvertently to an escalation into warfare. And of course, we have to remember that the United States is duty-bound to come to the defense of South Korea in the event of any major exchange of fire. The small stuff the Americans can stay out of. If it gets big, then the United States are in. If the United States get in, we have the possibility then of a major conventional war, because at this point the North Koreans still cannot launch a nuclear weapon, although the tactical aspects remain to be seen. If the Americans get in, then the Chinese have to get involved. So no one really wants this to get any bigger than it is. So there's a lot of bluster on the part of President Obama and others about the consequences of the ballistic missile test. But quite frankly, I think it's going to go ahead. I think there'll be a lot of protestations. I think the Philippines, Australia, and Indonesia need to be a little concerned, because apparently the boosters are going to fall somewhere in a triangle between those three countries, and we don't know exactly where they're going to fall. But other than that, I think North Korea will eventually be able to leverage something out of the test.
And so, finally, Paul, in your opinion, is it a mistake to exclude Iran, which has nuclear ambitions, and of course North Korea, which has nukes? Is it a mistake to exclude them from summits like this and talks?
I think so, and it may sound a little odd, but I firmly believe in the mafia axiom that you keep your friends close, but you keep your enemies closer. And if we want to bring North Korea and Iran back into the community of nations, if we want to treat them on security affairs as if they're responsible adults and not petulant teenagers, then what we have to do is bring them to these sort of summits. Nothing's going to happen at the summit other than some resolutions about how to better control and secure small amounts of radioactive material. So I cannot see the harm in listening to the Iranians, listening to the North Koreans, and exchanging views about how to counter proliferation of nuclear material to non-state actors. Let's face it, even though Iran and North Korea have relationships with various non-state actors, let's say, for example, Hezbollah, they are rational, and they fully understand, I believe, what the consequences would be if they were to allow potentially weapons material to get into the hands of extremists. So I think this was a missed opportunity, not by the North Koreans, not by Iran, but by the United States, which, as the sponsor of this summit, might have done what the Koreans say is the kindly gesture of the rich uncle. The rich uncle can afford to be generous, and in this case, the United States was not.
Paul Buchanan is the founder and principal at 36-parallel.com. You can also find this chat as a video once more up at livenews.co.nz. Paul Buchanan, thanks very much for joining us.
My pleasure.